Welcome back, and we are picking up right where we left off on our last episode. I have 72 hours to leave the country. As I am on my way, I get a call from one of our mutual friends. She's like, I'm really not supposed to tell you this. I feel like you need to know what you're about to walk into. I walk into the cafe, and who is there? The other woman. Did I walk into this cafe this morning for a reason? So I sit down at her table opposite her. She sees me, realizes it's me, jaw is dropped, and I'm like, yeah, we need to talk. Welcome back, and we are picking up right where we left off on our last episode. I have 72 hours to leave the country, make a decision if I'm going to pursue this or if I want to stay in Indonesia. I packed my things, got on a flight to Jakarta, and then on a flight to Dubai. Once I was in Dubai, I decided to get a flight to New York, stayed in New York for 2 weeks, and then proceeded to make my way down to Mexico. As I am on my way to Cancun airport, I get a call from one of our mutual friends. And she's like, I'm really not supposed to tell you this, but woman to woman, I would not want to be in this situation, and I feel like you need to know what you're about to walk into. And she asks me a question first and says, what do you think the situation is? Like, why are you coming here? You know, like, what are you doing? And I give her all of the background and explain that Axe and I have had several conversations where he has declared his undying love for me, and that, you know, I'm at the end of every road, that we're soulmates, that he thinks that we'll always, you know, end up together, and that it's always me. And I'm going to figure that out with him. And she goes, okay, well, he's been living here with someone else for months. And then, you know, with the glass shattering in my head, all of a sudden, everything else is starting to make sense. So he had been living there with the other woman that we were in the triangle with, which explains why he didn't want me to come when I offered right after the collapse. They were together. So while he's with her and trying to make that work, he's also having these conversations with me, telling me what he was telling me. And I'm wondering if throughout the entirety of our relationship, he was saying those things to her at the same time and really kind of leading us both on and thinking, giving us hope that, yeah, we were going to be chosen, that it was really special and really different, and just really saying that to both of us simultaneously. And so I'm experiencing this huge shock, this big heartbreak, and then have to decide, I'm in transit. I'm literally on my way. Do I go back? Where do I go? What do? I can't go back to Indonesia now. The borders are closed. I kind of have to go to Mexico. Like, you know, I'm on my way. So I proceed. Have a conversation with him when I get there. It's very fruitless. It was about 8 hours of me trying to understand why he did the things he did, trying to just like close the conversation and like close the relationship and, you know, feel like there's some sort of closure. But it was very unresolved. He was in a really nuanced trauma response of just kind of shutting down and not really being able to speak much or provide any kind of closure or any self-awareness, but just being very, very frozen. The next morning, my friend who told me about all of it said, hey, you know, come down the street, let's get brunch at this cafe. You know, it's kind of in a part of town where neither of them are. You won't run into them. Meet me here. I hadn't really slept much that night, so I was very tired, insomniac, and reeling. I get dressed, go down to meet her at the cafe. She messages me and says, oh, I'm running a bit late. You know, I'll be about 20 minutes. I'm like, okay. I walk into the cafe, and who is there? The woman. We had never actually met in real life, but we knew who the other person was. And it felt like I was competing with her for the longest time, and there was all of this built up resentment for what she represented in my mind, you know, the other woman, the one that kind of was always in the way. And I think she doesn't see me when I walk into the cafe. I kind of rush past and hide behind a pillar. And I think to myself, what are the chances that she's sitting in here? This is kind of crazy, especially when my friend said that they wouldn't be in this area because they don't live here, around this area. And I think, do I just run out? Like, she's not going to see me. I can just go somewhere else. Or did I walk into this cafe this morning for a reason? Is there an opportunity here to grow, to find some resolution, some closure? And I'm like, yeah, this is too weird for it to not have meaning. So I sit down at her table opposite her. She sees me, realizes it's me, jaw is dropped. And I'm like, yeah, we need to talk. And she's like, yeah, wow, okay. We skip the pleasantries and we cut straight to what's going on. We're kind of trying to clarify, what the truth actually is at this point, because we'd realized that there were so many things that didn't add up. So I said, what's your version of events from the beginning, from 2020? What is your version of events? What did he tell you? What was your impression? What did you think was going on? And what was in your head, really? Like, obviously he and I were in a relationship. Why were you even talking to him? Like, what made you think that that was okay? Because it tortured me that you guys would, have these ongoing interactions and this flirtation. Like, it just felt really inappropriate. But I didn't have the boundaries back then to feel like I could say, this isn't okay with me and you need to choose, or you can't talk to someone. I never wanted to be the type of person to say you can't talk to someone. And I didn't have the language back then to say, if you do this, then I feel this way. So I just kind of suffered in self-betrayal for a really long time before I had that skill set. There was also a point, which I forgot to mention, that at the very beginning of our relationship, probably about 1 week in, he cheated on me with her. And that was a really monumental moment. And so I asked her about that. And I said, hey, do you remember when we were all living in Portugal? And, he came over to your house one night and you guys hung out, and what happened that night? And what did he tell you? Because we were together and it was just very weird and confusing. And so we basically re-examined a year and a half of our timelines and put together all of these pieces side by side, realizing what he had told her, what he had told me, where there were things that didn't add up, where there were lies, where there was just a little bit of manipulation and maneuvering the story to make it seem a little bit different. And so basically to her, he said that, I was never really in the picture when we were working things out and talking about getting back together. I wasn't even there. Whereas to me, the conversation was, yeah, I'm deciding if it's you or her. And so the conversation was very different to both of us. But when she realized what he had said to me over the couple of months leading up to that moment, telling me that I was the one and writing me that letter, she was equally as furious as I was. So I was sitting there a bit more fragile, and she was angry and wanted to go over to his house to confront him. And I was like, I'm not going over there with you. That's crazy. I saw him last night. No way. I was like, I think you and I should make a pact though. I think that we need to stick together because clearly, he's pinned us against each other, and I think we're stronger if we stay together. So her and I kind of made this pact, and we started talking about what kind of things might have happened in our childhood that we were sort of in this situation, piecing together some theories. She told me about her dad, and I was like, yeah, that kind of makes sense, man. I told her about my dad, and she was like, yeah, that makes sense too. And we were both like, all right, well, we've got some similar daddy issues, so I can see why you're here. And we made a pact. We kind of agreed that we were going to, no matter what, never get roped back in to the on again, off again saga of someone choosing us and us feeling like we were the one, and falling into the trap of this idealistic sense of romance and what we thought love was supposed to be or what it was supposed to look like, and realizing that it was actually very toxic. So we made that pact, we shook on it, we hugged it out and said, we never go back. Okay, I'm agreeing, never go back. Okay, yeah. I had been in the on again, off again for about a year and a half. She had been in for about I think close to 11 years. So for her, it was really brutal because they were just constantly on and off. And I was like, you definitely can't go back because that's your whole life. You need to start a new life, dude. She later moved to Austin, and we actually kept in touch and still kind of friendly to this day, which is really nice. And an unexpected twist in the story. They did break up. She left and she moved on. Married someone, has a kid now. She got her happily ever after, which was great. She healed from all of her things. I decided that I needed some space, and so I moved down to Tulum. When I get to Tulum, I'm like, okay, this whole relationship saga is behind me. I can finally concentrate on my business and getting things back up to where they were. I can finally recover from this huge financial trauma of losing all this money and having to start over again. While I'm doing this, it's evident to me that if I'm going to kind of recover, that I also need a really big injection of capital because I basically didn't have any money. And so to keep the business running and pay for all of my team members and, to invest in doing a launch, I needed to borrow some money. So I pitched to like an investor for a high interest loan because I couldn't get a bank loan at that point because I wasn't living in Australia anymore and I wasn't really in any other systems. Borrowed $50,000, put everything into the business, had a team of maybe 7 people at this point in time. And I was really, really afraid of burning out because I had adrenal fatigue probably about 6 months prior, where right after I'd made quite a bit of money and right before I lost everything in the whole crypto saga, I had really, really bad burnout. And I was out for about 4 weeks with a very intense recovery. So I was kind of afraid that if I kept pushing in business that I would burn out again, that I would hit that illness again. And I thought to myself, I can't have that same mindset that I had before this whole thing happened. And I don't want to risk that. I want to make sure that it is easy, that it does feel more balanced and sustainable, and that I'm not doing things with this kind of all or nothing mindset where I'm just creating more and more pain for myself. And if I don't achieve it, then it's the complete end of the world because that's all I have. I knew that I needed support to help me with that. And I didn't really know where to go because I didn't trust anyone. The people that I had trusted in so many different ways, from, romantic relationships to investments to people that I had hired for business coaching, had kind of all, it felt like had screwed me over in some way, or that had they, people would stretch the truth, or people would sell you a dream that wasn't necessarily rooted in something that was really possible. And I was like, well, okay, I just really need someone that's honest to tell me the truth. And I need someone that I can really trust so I can make sure that I'm following something that will work at this point. I had a friend who I'd known for several years that had a background in psychology. Master's in clinical psych, several years as a behavioral therapist in practice, working in behavior modification, and then shifted into building a coaching business. So she had a really excellent skill set. I'd been coached by her before, and I knew that she was a good coach, and I knew her on a personal level. We were friends. And she had something that I did not have, that I didn't see many people have in the entrepreneurial space, which was peace of mind. She seemed genuinely happy, not stressed, not burnt out, and she seemed to kind of have this life is good, business is not hard. And I was like, bullshit, man, business is fucking hard. What are you talking about? Anyone that says it's not hard is lying. I kind of had this idea in my head that, people would in front of a camera tell you that, oh yeah, you can just build this funnel and you can just do this and it's all going to be so easy and you just make money while you sleep. But behind closed doors, people were working 16 hours a day, stressed out of their mind, not sleeping. And then there was this two-faced thing happening. And so that's what I mean when I say I didn't trust anyone. But I was like, there's no way that Carly is doing that. She's genuinely just actually figured something out that I don't know. So I reached out to her and I was like, hey, listen, I would really love your help with this. I have some trust issues though. So, can we do 1 month and just see what happens in 1 month? And of course, back then I still kind of had silver bullet thinking where I thought that you could get really big change very quickly. And it took me a while before I realized that true change happens in increments sustainably over time. And that if you really want to change, it's going to be a commitment. It's not going to happen in a day or a week or a month. And if anyone tries to sell you a breakthrough in 1 hour that did what someone else couldn't do in 10 years of therapy, you need to run in the other direction because that person is lying. You cannot have a breakthrough in 1 hour that will change your life. You can have a breakthrough, but a breakthrough in and of itself without ongoing behavior modification is not sustainable. And that's one of the reasons the self-help industry is so messed up. So I was like, okay, cool. This person is a person of science. This is great. We spent a month together. We made some shifts. And I was like, okay, I definitely feel like something happened. You know, I do feel a little bit better. I do feel more calm, but I also feel like I got a lot more to do. So we signed on for another 2 or 3 months. And that's when the real work started to begin. That's when we started working through the trauma that came up from losing all of the money, because that's when I started panicking and freaking out and going into these spirals where I'd be like, this isn't fair. I can't believe that this has happened. If this didn't happen, then I would be somewhere completely different right now. I wouldn't be in this situation. This is not okay. And anything bad that was happening, I would just point it back to that event and to my ex-partner, and I would just blame the event and I would blame him, and I would get so upset where I'd be like, everyone has screwed me over. Like, I'm such a victim of all of this. It's so unfair. You know, like, I just, you know, the money, and I was so fixated on what I lost or what I thought I lost that I couldn't really move forward with what I was creating. It was such a big perception of loss, and there was so many emotions of grief anchored to that. Eventually, we had a really great conversation about the money, and she reframed something for me using a framework or using a style of therapy called acceptance and commitment therapy, which is the third wave of behaviorism. The second wave is cognitive behavioral therapy. And so if you're someone that is thinking about getting therapy and you want to find a great therapist, something that has really worked for me is acceptance and commitment therapy. And I would strongly encourage or highly recommend anyone that specializes in that framework because it is really, really phenomenal. And I've done a lot of different work and that has undoubtedly been the most effective. So she presents to me this idea, which is, what if the money that you're so attached to that you think defines you and your worth and your success and, you know, how smart you think you are, what if that money was never actually yours? And I was like, well, that's crazy because it was totally mine. You know, like I got screenshots. And she's like, okay, well, you know, it's not like you really made it from putting hours in or reps in, you know, like you were, you know, it was crypto. Like it doesn't really count. And I was like, of course it counts. She's like, no, I do. She was like, well, just, you know, humor me. What if it was never really yours? How would you feel? And I was like, I guess then it wouldn't feel like such a big loss. And she's like, right. So what's the opportunity? I was like, yeah, well. And so she kind of just kept prompting me to focus on what I could do right now rather than where I was out of control. I didn't have power anymore. And when I had really embraced and accepted that I couldn't change the past, I stopped agonizing over it. And so that was the acceptance part. The commitment part is making continual changes that allow you to keep moving forward in the direction that you want to go. But until you truly accept that life is the way that it is, that the nature of reality is the way that it is, that there is always going to be some bad and some good, and that life is a constant state of flux and things are always going to return back into balance, until you accept that maybe I have these, you know, sicknesses or illnesses, maybe, you know, I'm in this situation where my hands are tied, and you need to accept the state of things before you can change anything. And the more you resist and the more you fight, the more you're going to expend emotional energy looping around in things that you can't change. And so that's kind of one of the foundational principles of that therapy, which is really important. We then started to do some really great work on identity. And I started to realize that maybe who I thought I was and the way that I was identifying wasn't actually something that was fixed or permanent in any way. Who we are is actually just a series of behaviors at any given time. And those behaviors are formed through our conditioning, not just in childhood, but throughout our life, what gets continually reinforced. So I started to think maybe there's a possibility that I'm not even really this entrepreneur. Maybe there's a possibility that I'm not even really doing any of this. This is all just driven by something that's being continually reinforced, but maybe it's not actually who I am. Who am I underneath all of this? What am I really pursuing and what do I really want if it's not continuously being reinforced? And the same thing in relationships, right? I think so many of us need to go on a real journey of discovering who it is we really are in order to know what it is that we really want, not just who we think we are and what we think we want based on what our parents reinforced, based on what society has reinforced or what we've come up against and, where we've been rewarded and gotten validation or significance or anything else that feels good that we get hooked on. Like all of the micro moments in a day where your brain gets fueled with dopamine from looking at your phone, those things are happening on micro and macro moments throughout your life. And all of that shapes your behavior, whether consciously or unconsciously. So I was having these awarenesses that maybe, these things have been shaped without me realizing them. And so I start analyzing every single behavior. And I start looking at it through the frame that she taught me, which is the behavior frame of going, okay, what is the stimulus that's prompting the behavior? What is the behavior? And then what is the outcome that's either positively or negatively reinforcing it that is then keeping me in a particular pattern? And once I started to understand the way that our behaviors get reinforced, and I was actually looking at that every single time, I could see how everything I was doing, from comparing myself to others to going into a spiral where I started feeling ashamed or, becoming a victim of my own stories, all of it, I could see what was prompting it. I could also see the payoff or what I got to avoid that was difficult that I didn't want to do. And I started to become really, really masterful at replacing those behaviors with more effective strategies to get what I really wanted. So this kind of was like this really huge ongoing series of, wow, okay, we're getting closer. I can really feel that this is working. And I feel more and more empowered and in control of my life. This is amazing. Okay. And then I hit this huge halt, like the feeling of brakes screeching, tire, like rubber. And that was this internal halt where I found this new coach that kind of promised me the world. And I really believed that I still didn't have the result that I wanted yet. And I thought, well, it must be my coach's fault that I don't have the result because we've been working together for 4 months and I should, or three or 4 months, and I should definitely have the result by now. So it's weird that I don't have it. It's not me. It's definitely the coach. I need to go and hire this new person. And what I was in was called shiny object syndrome. This is a really, really common code of behavior that we can get into, whether in business or in dating, where you think that the person or the thing that's right in front of you isn't working, and you go, oh, there's something new and shiny over there. That's got to be the thing. And now that has all of my attention. And you drop the ball that you currently have to go and pursue this new ball. But then you just keep dropping balls and pursuing new balls and not actually getting anywhere. But that distraction is what keeps us on the hamster wheel and prevents us from making any actual progress. And so it's actually a coping mechanism. It's a safety mechanism that prevents us from getting what we want, and it keeps us safe in the place where we are comfortable, where we're familiar. And that way we don't have to be presented with any kind of risk of something that we don't know how to handle. And so whenever we get really, really close to something profoundly different, like a an upgrade in reality, like a really, you're about to break through from this like shitty relationships into this amazing relationship of everything you ever wanted, or, from this shitty job into like your dream job. For me, I was about to shift from being in patterns that I had been in of struggle and, financial hardship and being constantly burned out in my business, where that was my reality, to finally having a reality where everything got to actually be sustainable and fulfilling on my terms. And that was so foreign and unfamiliar to me that I didn't know what that felt like. And so I started sabotaging it with my shiny ball syndrome and going, yeah, no, I don't think this is working. And so this behavior of sabotage will typically come up. You could be, I've seen this happen in relationships where people are in this, like myself, been in, great dynamics. And then all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, I don't know if it's working. It's like, what do you mean? Where did that come from? I don't know. I don't like the way that they've scratched themselves. It's weird. And then you just are like, yeah, there's this new guy though. Anything where it doesn't really make logical sense, but you can kind of convince yourself that it makes sense. That's probably that safety mechanism kicking in. It's a real gnarly one. So most of the time people are in this pattern, and I had been in this pattern for a very long time without anyone really noticing, because unless you have a great partner or friends or a therapist that can spot this out for you, you're probably just going to get away with it again and again and again. And maybe one day, if you're lucky, you'll have the awareness where you'll be so sick of your own shit and you'll be like, wait, maybe I'm doing the thing. Ideally, you can bring yourself out of it, but also it's great to have people that can point that out as well. Everybody needs to learn about this. It's very important. So luckily for me, after I start sabotaging my incredible progress with my coach with the psychology background, who is also my friend, and thinking I'm going to go hire this other person, one of my other friends who had known me for several years, was having a conversation with me, and I shared with him what was going on. And he was like, listen, mate, you're not going to want to hear this, but Carly can actually help you solve your problems, and this, hiring this new person isn't going to help. He was like, you are the reason why you don't have the result. And I'm like, are you sure? Is it really me? He's like, yes. He's like, I have known you for years, and as long as I've known you, you've had this pattern of behavior and you're still in it. It hasn't resolved. He's like, you thought you resolved it, but whenever you get really close to actually rewiring this behavior, you run away. You have a pattern of running away. And then you blame the other person and you go, yeah, it was their fault. They didn't do what they said they could do. Everyone's a liar. Everyone's a fraud. See, I have so many reasons why I can't trust anyone. And then you just stay in your shit. And I was like, oh my God, I do that. And I was like, okay, well, let's entertain the possibility that maybe it is me, and maybe I should stay with my current coach. And yeah, if I hired this new person, he would need to get to know me, and that would take months. And I was like, that's not conducive. I was like, okay. And he was like, trust me. He's like, if you really want to change, then you're going to just lean in rather than keep running away and finding people to blame. And I was like, okay. And so I told the coach that was schmoozing me. I wasn't going to proceed with him, and that I already had a coach and that everything was fine. And then I went back to my coach, and I was so afraid that she was going to fire me because I was afraid that I had insulted her by saying like, oh, I don't think I'm going to get the results with you. And what happened next was a really profound moment for both of us, which neither of us saw coming. And it shaped us both as humans. So we got on a call, and I shared my end. I apologized. I was really hoping that she would want to keep working with me, and I was really nervous that she would say no. She was very level-headed, very grounded, and I could tell was definitely a little bit upset, or, was definitely emotionally affected by the situation. But instead of being triggered by it and being offended and taking it personally, she was able to rise above it in that moment. And instead of saying, well, I don't think it's a good fit anymore, or like, I don't think that you're actually willing to do the work or anything like that, which is very common in that industry, she actually turned to me and showed me for the very first time what unconditional love really looked like. And she said, I only want what's best for you. whether that's with me or not. And if you think that that's with someone else and you really believe that, then I support you. And if you think that we can do this work together, then I'll be here with you and hold your hand. And I realized at that point that I was so afraid of rejection that it never even occurred to me that someone would ever be able to say something like that and respond in that way. And I realized that I had never experienced that reaction before. So from there, we did our work together. And one of the first things that we did was a roles integration. Now, a roles integration is not something that you can easily Google, but it's essentially a process where you identify the role that you have been playing for most of your life. And then you create a new role or a new identity that you want to step into. And so I spent a few days journaling on all of the different behaviors and traits and things that I didn't like about myself, or things that were destructive, things that had caused me a lot of pain, behaviors that caused other people, most importantly, pain. And I looked at where those behaviors had come from. And they all kind of came from the way that I'd grown up. They came from the way that my mother had shaped me, with this lens of like, you need to win at all costs. And that was the most important thing. And so winning was unconsciously more important to me than true empathy, true connection. It was more important to me than having any kind of true acceptance or slowness, steadiness, and unconditional love and acceptance for myself. Because what I thought on an unconscious level was that if I win, if I'm a winner, then that means my mum will love me. She'll finally accept me. She'll approve of me. She'll finally be proud of me. And that is what was driving all of my behavior on such a deep level that I was just completely oblivious to. So when I realized that I was constantly trying to win at all costs and that it was creating a lot of pain for me and everyone around me, I was like, okay, well, I don't want to be that person anymore. I don't want to be the robot. And I was then asked, well, who do you want to be? And I thought, well, I want to be the opposite of that. I want to be graceful. I want poise and elegance. You know, I want to feel slowness rather than this quick, you know, like we've got to move quickly because, you know, everything is an opportunity. You've got to go, got to scale quickly, got to get there to the top of the mountain. And I was like, no, I don't want that hustle kind of energy. You know, I want to feel in my body here now. And I was like, okay, what I want to step into is Grace Kelly. And I want to ask myself if the way that I'm behaving is something that I'd be proud of, rather than focusing on getting to the end goal being the most important thing. So my intention for that roles integration was to be unconditionally proud of myself. Something that I had never experienced, because I was only ever proud of myself based on what I was outputting. It was based on what I was achieving, and it kept me in an endless loop of pursuit, chasing the next thing, the next dopamine hit. And that is ultimately, you know, the pattern of high achievers. And even a lot of great geniuses that have high dopamine levels, they're constantly pursuing, chasing, and never really present in the now, appreciative of what's here, because they're so focused on the future. And we can't ever really be both. We can't be focused on the future and focused on the present at the same time. We can't be focused on a goal and here now. It's only one or the other, because they're different parts of the brain. And when you're focused on the future, you're not truly happy, because happiness is an emotion that is experienced in the here and now. And when you meditate, when you practice mindfulness, you activate the here and now. And so it's really important that we have awareness over those two ways of being, the pursuit into the future that activates the dopamine versus the here and now that activates serotonin. If you're someone like me, who I've been for most of my life, which is someone that was constantly pursuing things in the hope that one day I'd eventually get there, you never will. And that's something that's commonly known as arrival fallacy. Because there is no there is only here, and what is here right now has always been here in this moment. But the trick is to stop focusing on what you're about to get and to make that switch and to kind of keep coming back to that and doing that again and again and again. So if I didn't need to achieve something to be proud of myself, if I was just proud of myself for who I was being, then I could actually finally really be free, because I was releasing myself from the endless rat race or hamster wheel that I'd been on for so many years. We did a few more months of integration work, values work, and what I noticed was that in the months that followed, I was very present, more than I'd ever been before. I was stopping to literally smell the roses or the grass. I was noticing the sunsets more. I was relishing moments more. I wasn't in a hurry. I was really slow. And things that I would previously skip over and not give attention to, I was enamored by, thinking like, this is a miracle. Like, wow, this is great. This is so great. Oh my God, this is brilliant. And everything felt very soft. Everything felt very easy. I was truly, truly present for the first time. And I had no goals other than to expand what was already there, to expand what I was already feeling, rather than trying to seek or pursue something that I didn't believe or see that I already had. It was at that point that I decided to relinquish my goals and my idea of what I thought success was. Decided that I wanted to just focus on being here now and continuing to do the work of becoming someone that I could be really proud of. And so rather than measuring my worth and my success on my output, focusing on, am I proud of myself for who I am being?